Welcome to Forensic Science Sunday, where I tell you one true crime case that was solved using forensic science, all while doing, that's right, my makeup. Today's video is going to be featuring the Colourpop and Disney's Tim Burton's Nightmare Before Christmas collaboration palette. All of the other items I'm using in this video will be linked in the description below. Please read the disclaimer. I am not a professional forensic pathologist, nor am I a professional makeup artist. I'm just the average girl at home like you, planning my makeup. Sometimes I do my nails while I talk about a true crime case. So if that's something you're into, then you're more than welcome to go ahead and hit that subscribe button. Also, quick reminder, the comment section is a privilege. Don't fuck it up. Now let's get into today's case. What is this on my shirt? What the hell? What is that? I don't know. Maybe I like drooled at some point while I was taking a nap. Lucy, turn off the TV with your paws, please. I swear, sometimes I wish this cat had hands, thumbs at least. See what I mean? Like, do you hear that? That's the TV. Is it my imagination or is this bitch turning on the TV? This story takes place in the small town of Farmsville, Texas. This town was the small town of small towns. I mean, the only thing this town had going for itself was basically at some point it was named the onion capital of the state. Right. Like Idaho being for potatoes. But I mean, now this was a very wholesome town where oftentimes people would leave their doors unlocked. I don't know who, but I ain't never leaving my door unlocked. It was one of those towns where everybody knows everybody. These people weren't even locking their doors because nothing ever happened in this town. And if something ever did happen, they already knew who it was because there was like only a handful of people who it could have been. Rachel Tolson was a 20-year-old mother raising her 6-month-old daughter and living alone near the town center. Rachel's baby girl was named Avery. Now, Rachel did go through some difficult times in her teen years. As we all do, she went through her little trouble phase, is what they call it. But I mean, I feel like this is pretty normal. Most teenagers go through this phase. You know, you're starting to develop your own personality, your own perception and way of thinking about things, and they may not fall in line with what your parents, want. And I'll give you something else too. Even as an adult, you still might not fall in line with what your parents want. So I mean, I'm not trying to teach rebellious children here, so I digress. Oh my God, did I just literally put my foundation on before my concealer. That tells you guys how much I'm out of it. So I don't know. Okay, well, I guess we're gonna have to double up on the foundation or something, or see how this works. We're doing something new today. Rochelle did go through some difficult times as a teenager, but she loved her daughter. In fact, her parents described her as being a very dedicated mother. Now, at the time, Rochelle was in the process of getting a divorce. In fact, she was going through a "who is texting me?" Sorry about that, you guys. Give me 1 second. Let me turn my phone off because people are texting. We have no freaking manners. Sorry. I love you guys, all of you. I don't like interruptions. Okay. Anyway, back to what I was saying. So Rochelle was in the process of getting a divorce, and it was a very, very nasty process. Her ex-husband, Andrew Tolson, or soon-to-be ex-husband Andrew Tolson, he did not want to get a divorce. He did not agree with it, and he was giving Rochelle a very difficult time. But Rochelle was going through with this divorce because she felt like Andrew was immature, and basically he just never grew up. Like, she grew up after she had you know, their daughter Avery, and she just felt like he wasn't maturing as fast as she was after their daughter was born. And this was something that really bothered her, and it didn't seem like he was working on it or he was getting any better. So she made the decision to move on with her life, and she was doing just that. Her ex-husband Andrew had moved out, and she was living on her own with her daughter Avery. Now, on March 18th, 2004, Rochelle's mother was in the area, and she stopped by Rochelle's home to pay her a visit. It was around 7:30 a.m. in the morning when she came by. After knocking on the door and not getting a response, she decided to just enter the home. She entered the home, she was looking around and calling out to Rochelle, but Rochelle didn't respond. She heard the baby, and so she went into Rochelle's bedroom, where she found little baby Avery laying on the bed alone. Rochelle was nowhere to be found in the home. Alarmed, Rochelle's mother started, calling, screaming out for her, and running throughout the home, searching the entire home. She looked underneath the bed, she looked in the closets, she looked in the bathroom. She was looking everywhere for Rochelle, and she could not find her. In addition to that, there was signs that something extremely wrong had happened there. The furniture in the bedroom had been moved around. So Rochelle's mom called the police. When investigators showed up to the crime scene, they found Rochelle's bed out of place. It was moved from up against the wall. The headboard had fallen forward. One of the nightstands was moved from up against the wall and kind of tilted and just out of place. In the kitchen, they found her divorce papers scattered on the floor. On one of the pages, they found a large footprint, as though someone had stomped on it. Could this be a clue to where Rochelle had gone? I don't know. Let's find out. According to Rochelle's mother, shortly after she had spoken with the police, she called her soon-to-be ex-son-in-law, Andrew, and she told him what had happened, that Rochelle was missing and nowhere to be found, and that the home had been ransacked, and that their daughter was left alone by herself. And he responded with, "Well, I can't leave work right now." I mean, really, sir? I don't know. He's a special character. That's what we're gonna say. I find that suspicious, but I mean, he could have just been stuck at work. Like, I don't know, but I don't know. I would have just been like, look, my daughter is at home by herself. Her mom is missing. I gotta fucking go. For someone who didn't want to get this divorce from Rochelle, he's acting a lot like he don't really give a F right now. I don't know. This guy, you guys know how it is. We'll figure him out in a second. Police continued with their investigation, questioning everyone in town, and a massive search for Rochelle commenced. There was so many people assisting with the search that investigators had a really hard time interviewing people door to door because nobody was home. They were all out looking for Rochelle. For the next 5 days, the search continued with no sign of Rochelle and no new leads. I had to switch into my favorite headband because honestly, that other headband was rinky-dink, and it was like, although many of the townspeople began to think that Rochelle may have ran off, her mother was adamant that Rochelle would never leave her daughter Avery. In fact, she describes Avery as Rochelle's oxygen. Hello, are we pink, or like what's going on here? It's so pink, my eyes look pink. It's just weird. I don't know what's going on with my camera settings. First it was yellow, and I've managed to get it out of yellow, and now it's pink again. Don't ask. So police really wasn't having any luck until a hiker in the woods made a gruesome discovery. About 10 miles from Rochelle's home, he discovered charred remains. The charred remains was of a young female and fit the description of Rochelle. Through dental records, medical examiners were able to identify the body as Rochelle Tolleson. Not too far from where her body was discovered, investigators found an open area fire pit with several logs in the burned area. Because Rochelle's body had been burned, a lot of the forensic evidence was destroyed in the fire. Investigators knew solving this case would not be easy. So, police started with the most likely suspect, Rochelle's soon-to-be ex-husband, Andrew Tolleson. Now, the general procedures with cases like these is that investigators will try to rule out the suspects that are the closest to the victim, because oftentimes they are the perpetrators. Andrew became their prime suspect. Hello, detective. How are you today? Friends, family members, and most of the townspeople showed up to Rochelle's funeral to show their respects. The townspeople were baffled at how something like this could happen to someone like her in their small town. Like, they were horrified. They just didn't understand how this could happen. And I mean, in such a small town, there's not that many suspects, there's not that many people, so someone amongst them, possibly even someone that was at Rochelle's funeral that day, could have been the killer. Like, as you can imagine, this was extremely unsettling for them. Investigators theorized that it had to be someone close to her. It definitely was someone that she knew, because the town was so small that everybody knew each other. So, you know, somebody did it. The autopsy report revealed that Rochelle had been sexually assaulted, stabbed, and then strangled to death. Investigators brought Andrew in for questioning, and he told police that he had an alibi for the night of her murder, that he was at a bonfire party with some friends. In fact, one of the friends drove him back home that night because he was extremely intoxicated, so intoxicated that he passed out at home and didn't wake up until the next day when he had to go to work. And shockingly, investigators were able to confirm that he was telling the truth. So if he didn't do it, then who did? However, they did think it was an odd coincidence that he had attended a bonfire party, and it just so happened that they found Rochelle's remains charred. Coincidence or circumstantial evidence? Now it's time to go into the palette. But anyway, back to the story. Police wanted to find out if there were any connection between the bonfire party and the crime scene. So they sent both the wood from the crime scene and the wood from the bonfire party over to an associate's professor of geography at the University of Tennessee. Just by looking at the wood, the professor was able to tell that both woods were mesquite wood. Mesquite wood is very common in that area. It is most oftentimes used to cook food with because it burns very slowly and it doesn't produce that much smoke. But unfortunately, he wasn't able to tell if the woods came from the same tree or not, because there wasn't any definitive markings on the woods that would be able to, that he would be able to compare. Then he remembered he had a friend that was telling him about some new tests that they had read about. This friend was a doctor at the Oak Ridge National Laboratory in Oak Ridge, Tennessee. And according to them, there was some kind of test that could identify the chemical fingerprint of wood. That's crazy. I didn't even know wood had a fingerprint. It was a fairly new test at the time. Now, according to the scientist that he sent the wood to, how it works is they put the wood underneath a laser beam. Then they excite a spark on the sample surface called the elements: hydrogen, nitrogen, oxygen, carbon, and you will see it appear almost immediately. The spark, known as the plasma cloud, contains all the chemical elements from the sample. Now, most of the elements were common except for one. It contained titanium, and a lot of titanium at that. This suggested to forensic investigators that the mystique tree that the wood came from was either growing near some sort of industrial plant or industrial area where titanium would have affected the grounds, like maybe the water in the ground area. Forensic scientists tested 11 logs in total, 8 from the crime scene and 3 from the bonfire party. And what do you know? All of the logs had identical levels of titanium in them and the exact same chemical makeup. The two sets of woods was a 99.99% match. This was proof that both the wood from the crime scene and the wood from the bonfire came from the same tree. This was the first time in forensic history that two sets of wood had the exact same chemical fingerprint in a criminal case. Finally, investigators had a crucial piece of circumstantial evidence. Now they knew that the woods came from the same tree. This raised major flags to the investigators, and immediately they started pointing the finger at Andrew Tulum. Although Andrew did have an alibi that night, all of the circumstantial evidence did point towards him. Could Andrew Tulum, in a drunken rage, possibly have murdered his soon-to-be ex-wife, Rochelle? But when investigators interviewed the attendees of the bonfire party, they told investigators that Andrew had nothing to do with the fire. There was another guy there who brought the mesquite wood for the bonfire. So police wanted to find out who was this guy. 21-year-old Moises Mendoza brought the firewood that night. Moises knew Rochelle from childhood. They had grown up together. I mean, they weren't friends, but they went to school together. They were in some of the same classes together. I think it said that they were in at least one class together throughout their school years. In kindergarten, in first grade, in high school, like there was always at least one class of hers that he was in. And he had made comments before in the past that he was into Rochelle, that he did like her. And something I think that is just so sad is that her mom said that she had pictures of them in elementary school together and first grade together, and that's gotta be very hard, you know, to look at your child's elementary school pictures and see their murderer standing just a couple of inches away from them. It's really eerie. Mendoza was at the time working as an air conditioner repair guy, and he was an acquaintance of Andrew and Rochelle's, actually. And I mean, like I said, this is a pretty small town, so it's difficult not to be an acquaintance with at least everyone in the town because of how small it is. So apparently, after Andrew and Rochelle had broken up, Mendoza expressed his feelings to Rochelle, saying that, you know, he liked her and he wanted to, you know, maybe date her. However, Rochelle didn't have any interest in Mendoza, and so that never really happened. And there's no real evidence that the two were ever actually friends or ever dated or anything other than just being acquaintances and the occasional seeing each other at parties and saying hello and speaking then. So police decided to take a little look into Moises Mendoza. And they found that he actually had a criminal background. He had a few convictions for robbery and attempted sexual assaults or attempted kidnapping. I'm not sure. It might have been attempted kidnapping. Basically, he tried to take some young girls from a college campus a few times, you know, a couple times here and there. And he was unsuccessful and he got caught. He also was in a lot of trouble, like I said, for these robberies that he had. So he did have prior convictions on his record. He was actually out on bail for one of these crimes when Michelle had been murdered. While searching his home, police did find a pair of boots that were covered in soot and gasoline. And so they wanted to find out if these boots matched the prints that they found on the divorce papers in, Rochelle's home. So they gave the boots and a sample of the divorce papers to a forensic analysis. Now, there was just a partial print left behind on the divorce papers, not a full footprint. So what the forensic analyst did, what he did was take a copy of the impression of the sole of the boot, and he did a visual comparison to the partial print found on the document. Initially, he found that the shoe was very similar to the footprint found on the document. Once he found out that the boot was the same kind of shoe from the print, he wanted to see if there was any additional characteristics that could set the print apart so that it would match specifically to Mendoza's footprint, if that makes sense. You know how you get a brand new pair of shoes and you're like, I gotta break them in? That's essentially what they were looking for, those broken in patterns where the shoe had begun to kind of shape to Mendoza's foot so that it was more specific of a print. This is the kind of evidence they were looking for to be able to say 100% that it was Mendoza who had stepped on that paper, basically, and not someone else that was just wearing the same type of boots as him. I think it's called unique accidental foot impressions, if I'm not mistaken. The forensic analysis was able to come to the conclusion that the print on the document was that, in fact, Moises Mendoza's. He was able to find this with exclusion of all others, so it was like definitely his print. Forensic examiners also tested a pair of jeans that was found in Mendoza's home, and on the jeans there was soot, and underneath the soot they found tiny pieces of blood, or tiny traces I should say, of blood. They then sent out the traces of blood to a DNA analyst, and it came back positive that it was in fact Rochelle Tollison's blood. You busted, dude. You are busted. I might be putting too much, but I really don't care because it's looking so pretty right now. I'm just in love. I'm in love with the stripper. No, I'm not, but I mean, girl, we have to take this underneath the eye. We'd be a fool not to. Investigators now had enough evidence to confront Mendoza with what they found. And when they confronted Mendoza with their findings, they say that he was very detached. He appeared to have no emotion. He was cold, and he just basically told them what happened without any remorse whatsoever. You guys can go look up his interview online and watch it if you guys want to see, but basically he told it so just like cold and monotone. So he says that he woke up the next day and he was thinking like, man, this has got to be a dream. But then he walked outside in the back and he realized, oh no, it's not a dream, and he was just really, really scared, he says. Whatever. Like, you're scared? Dude, think about how she felt when you were attacking her. You just killed a woman and burned her body, and you're scared? You went into her home, kidnapped her, sexually assaulted her, stabbed her and strangled her, and then burned her body in a fire pit. And you thought it was a dream? This guy, he got some nerves, dude. I just can't. I can't with people like this. I can't. Because I'll waste my entire day trying to figure out why. Why didn't they have other things to do? So Mendoza did confess the entire thing to police. He said that he had in fact murdered Rochelle, and he was scared. He couldn't believe what he had done, and that's the reason why he tried to cover her body up by burning it in the fire pit. Prosecutors said that on that night Mendoza had been drinking heavily, and he had gotten into an argument with several different partygoers, and two of them were women, and he was yelling at them. He began threatening them, saying that he was going to kill them and chop their heads off because they weren't giving him the time of day pretty much. So they believe at some point during the night, Mendoza recognized Andrew at the party. He saw him there and he thought to himself, if Andrew is here, then that means that Rochelle is at home alone. He took this as his opportunity to go and take advantage of Rochelle. Ooh, am I doing this right, guys? I never know with bronzer. I keep trying this bronzer thing out and I'm just like, I never know if I'm doing it right or not. So this is when he went to Rochelle's house and they are not sure how he got inside. He may have just knocked on the door and Rochelle recognized him, so she let him in. They believe there was some sort of struggle that occurred, causing the furniture to be pushed around and the divorce papers to get, you know, scattered and stomped on. And then they believe from there he probably forced her into his car, where he then took her to his house, to his home, or wherever the hell he took her to, and sexually assaulted her, stabbed her, and then strangled her to death. They believed later on in the evening he went to the state park and used the same firewood that he used at the bonfire to cremate, I can barely say it, to cremate Rochelle. The funny part is, although Mendoza was trying to get rid of the forensic evidence, he ended up actually creating more for himself by using the same firewood. It traced everything back to the same tree that the bonfire wood had been burned in, which ultimately led to his arrest. You already know, I'm in love with this. I'm like, ooh. Thanks to forensic science and some good police work, 3 months later, Moises Mendoza was convicted of first-degree murder and sentenced to death. What did you guys think about this case and my makeup look? Please let me know in the comments down below. If you like videos like these, you can check out my last episode. I'll leave it linked on the screen right here or right here. Like, comment, subscribe, and share. Please share because it really helps me out. And I'll see you guys next week with another Forensic Friday, Saturday, or Sunday, or any day of the week episode. Bye!